Hey, this is Barjan doing a review for Banquet for Fools. This is a game that came out on March 5th, 2026 of this year, and the publisher's name was Hannah and Joseph Games. I did play this game under their 1.1 patch, which has been out for a while. That being said, I didn't run into any game-breaking glitches, bugs of any kind. The performance was pretty good. It ran smooth. The only thing that I can say about this game performance-wise was the transitions were a little bit lengthy, but that's not really that big of a deal. Moving on to gameplay and mechanics. The controls on this game are the classic WASD to move. Mouse click also is an option if you feel like left clicking to move your characters around. There are a few keybinds in this game for sneak, charge. You can pin enemies while other people can just kind of slap them around while you have them pinned down. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. For the camera is fixed and looking at the party at an angle. There really isn't too much of an issue with this. I never really ran into an issue where I kind of wanted to change the angle or wish to move it around. It's pretty good. The only issue that I had during gameplay with the camera that actually ran into a problem was on specific maps. There are sections where you are walking along cliff edges, and it gets a little hard with the camera angle and the art style to kind of see where the path is. You can kind of solve this by just opening up the map and it'll show you where the path is, and then you can kind of just copy that and it works out. But other than that, not that big of a deal. For the mechanics of the game, your party gets sent out on a long quest, which you can take your time to go do and explore. While you're doing this, you're going to be fighting a lot of enemies. There are a few puzzles, along with some mysteries to solve. The majority of it is combat, though, which is fun if you're a combat-heavy person. But the combat does revolve around the old, I like to call it the old Final Fantasy ATB system, where you get a bar that fills up as you wait to do an action, such as to attack, melee, ranged, cast a spell, or use an item. It all fixates around this bar. So what you're doing while the bar is filling up is basically you're moving your characters around. So generally you're controlling one character at a time. You can pause the game and then select a different character and then move them around and then go back. So how you do this is that you right click. So right click kind of stops the game. And what it does is it opens up a bubble around your characters, and what that bubble represents is the reach of your character's current weapon. Whether it's ranged, then it'd be a big bubble, or small, let's say you have daggers, it'd be a smaller bubble. You can use this for a couple different things to your advantage, such as pausing the game. So if you kind of want to have a tactical moment and think about what's going on, just right click, it'll pause, you'll get that bubble, and then you can kind of look around and see what you're doing. Graphics and art style. So the art style is very cool. They use a claymation kind of vibe used to simulate the characters looking like they're dolls. This leads to a very satisfying combat when you see the models get chunked as they take damage. The background is pre-rendered, making it feel more like you're walking around in a diorama than you're playing a game. The other cool part about the background is that it truly does feel like you're walking around just the middle of nowhere. They do a great job with the background that's kind of already there, and then the claymation on the top of it to make it really feel like you're just lost. And it goes a long way as far as setting the theme and really making you feel immersed into the setting. The visuals are influenced by an 80s movie called The Dark Crystal, which leans heavily on a dark and gritty atmosphere. The influence is everywhere around the game, whether it be the races to make them more like the elf shape, to get away from the dwarf and human, or just the color tones, dark, gritty style. Probably not for everybody, but it definitely leans into that immersion again. Audio and sound design. They use a lot of acoustic instruments in the background to set the vibe that you're off the beaten trail and lost in the woods. The combat, they play more of an alien sounding instrument. I think this is accomplished by just a keyboard, possibly a theremin, but I'm leaning more towards the keyboard. The weapons, they sound crunchy and real when they hit their target, and they have a lot of sound cues when critting and rallying. Conversations are where I have the most issues. They use a grunting, almost reverb noise when the characters talk instead of voiced out lines to simulate that they're speaking another language. This is not to say that you need voice actors. I just feel like you're already going with that 90s kind of vibe theme, and they could have just as easily done the classic, the writing is scrolling across the screen and you got that almost like the sound of the writing scrolling. You find this a lot with games, old games like Shining Forces and stuff like that. Progression and pacing. This fell off to me, so like in a traditional RPG, you get experience for winning fights, finding secrets, or completing quests. But when you level in this game, you put 3 points into your skills and 1 point into stats. So your skill points, you put in 2 of them are weighted heavier than the third. This is based on how much you use the skill. So if you shoot a bow the whole level, then you would get, let's say, 5 points when you put a point into it. Try doing that with a skill you have not used in that level, and you're only going to get that 1 point. So my issue with this is a level 3 character and a level 6 character do not really feel any different other than wearing gear. For example, my level 6 rogue has just as many hit points as my tank does, and my rogue put no points into stamina, and my tank obviously focused on stamina. This is just confusing. And adding to the confusion, when you finish a quest, it brings you to a little victory scene where you get a skill upgrades and HP sometimes. This makes it feel like you actually have to do nothing but side quests, and then it also feels like that's more rewarding than actually just leveling. It makes the whole experience feel off, and it didn't feel good when I level like it should. Story and value / replayability. The story reminds me a lot of the 90s video games back when I was a kid. So a lot of times back then what would happen is your adventurer, the hero of the story, would start the game by getting a quest. This quest was very vague and you usually got a direction to go to. But generally you just kind of wander around, do side quests, and kind of just figure out the world, and eventually you would hit that quest at the end or halfway through the game where the story would actually pick up. This is no different. So in the beginning of the game, you get a quest from your lieutenant or captain. He tells you to go somewhere for a reason. You head off in that direction, and you do a lot of side quests, mysteries, and puzzles along the way. What's important here is that the world feels dangerous. The captain or lieutenant sets the vibe that things are not going well and he needs your help. And it's very understandable. As soon as you walk outside of town, anything can be the end of your party. Every single mob, monster, problem that comes in is going to be a giant threat to your party. Some of the many challenges that you will face on your journey. The starting town is not very large, so you get the real sense that you are desperate. You're not a large nation. You can't really get backup for your quest. So getting funds, getting supplies, this all feels challenging and hard to come by, which also makes it rewarding when you find these items. As far as replayability, there's about 30 hours of gameplay as far as the main story, and about another 30-ish if you wanted to do content completion and do everything there is to do in the game. There's a good amount of stuff that you can kind of sink your teeth into in this game if you choose to. As far as replayability, it's basically just trying out different classes and a different party dynamic, and that's about it. But you'd be doing the same story, same quests. So not much as far as replayability. Okay, so for final thoughts for A Banquet for Fools, we're going to do the breakdown of, there's 5 categories, each are worth 2 points, equaling 10, and then I'll give you the rating at the end. So as far as gameplay and mechanics, so for this I'm going with 1 out of 2 points. The reason for that is the controls are fine, camera is fine. It's just the majority of the game is combat, and the gameplay around that combat using the ATP bar, where you have to wait to have it be filled up before you can act, is just too taxing for the system that it makes. The idea that all you can really do is run around and dodge hits is just not a satisfying game loop. This is something that works very well for a game like Final Fantasy or the old RPGs where the characters line up and they just take turns, because multiple people are going at once, not just you waiting for your turn. So you can switch back and forth between other characters, but they're also on autopilot. So as you switch, you're going to do something, and then you go back to your character, and the computer already did something random, like use a healing item that you didn't want. So it doesn't really work. Graphics and art style. This, I gave it 2 out of 2. The graphics and the art style in this game are awesome. I really love the claymation style where the characters look like dolls. The background is rendered in there, so it kind of looks like it's just kind of walking around on this weird environment. They do everything very well with that. The graphics look good for what they're trying to go for with that creepy vibe, so full points on that. Audio and sound design. This I'm giving it 1 out of 2 for these reasons. The background music, fine. There's no issue there. It's very easygoing. They use a lot of acoustic music, and it really kind of comes up when you least expect it, and it's good. It's not bad. And where they lose the other point is, again, that sound design for text when you're having conversation, which the whole game has a lot of story. And again, this is not about voice acting. It's that the mumbles to pretend that it's a different language. It's just taxing, and it doesn't do it for me. I'm not a fan of that style. Progression and pacing. This, going back to the points that I already made, this gets 0 points out of it for me. It doesn't feel good to level. It feels more like you get more progression out of side quests than you do leveling, and that just makes the entire thing feel awkward, clunky, and just not a good gameplay loop. Story and value / replayability. This gets a 1 for me, and here's the reason. Almost contradicting myself, but in a weird way. So the story, again, I'm not a fan of how basic it is, but at the same time, it does what it's trying to do. So this game really goes heavy on giving you that nostalgic, like 90s kind of atmosphere game, where you're playing on like a Sega or something. Which it does well. You get a quest, you go, and basic isn't always bad. Where they get me is replayability. There's really not much of a gameplay loop that you could replay. It's just make different classes, and the way the game works, you can kind of, not well, but you can kind of do whatever you want with each class. So for the final verdict as far as points, I'm giving this game a 5 out of 10. This game is a great time as far as what it is. For someone looking for that 90s nostalgic feel for those RPGs back in the day, where every time you went to, let's say, Blockbuster and rented a game, that game was going to have a vastly different combat system or different anything compared to the last one that you got, whenever you rented the last game was. But for the most part, most people will play this game and have a good time for a little while, and then I think they're going to get annoyed with the mechanics that they're not used to playing with how far from modern games this is. But again, there is that niche audience that will love this game to death, but I don't think it's going to be the vast majority of the public. For that, again, I'm giving that 5 out of 10. But that's my rating, that's my review. Guys, it's Bargin. I hope you have a great day.